Phasmophobia's Elevator Pitch is a co-op ghost hunting puzzle game which can also be played solo. Players select a map to investigate along with what equipment they want to take with them for the investigation. Players of up to 4 are tasked with locating the ghost room within the map using a variety of tools at their disposal. Once the ghost room has been located, the real investigation begins. There are a total of 25 possible ghosts, each with different traits and characteristics, which can help you identify them. But crucially, players are looking for up to 3 key pieces of evidence, which in combination are unique to one of 25 different ghost types. This sounds simple enough, right? But the ghosts are not happy with your poking around their space, so they will attack on sight. Let the investigation begin. After playing Phasmophobia for over 60 hours, both solo and in a group, I feel more than qualified to tell you what I think the game does well and where I think the game falls short. It may be boring to do the game's tutorial, but it does provide a very good explanation of how to play the game and how to use the basic equipment that you'll use throughout the game. From then, the initial impression you get from Phasmophobia can be of a pretty slow and uneventful game during the lower difficulties, due to less active and more lenient ghost behaviours coupled with beginner level equipment. If you persevere and unlock professional difficulty and higher, this is when the game becomes far more entertaining, challenging, and overall more enticing as a game. If you play the lower difficulties with a friend as I did, using this time to learn the ghost types, then early difficulties are a good primer. But I think from a solo point of view that this would be really boring and I'd imagine quite the grind. As a team of 2 or more, it's fun to piece together the evidence, and this scales the higher difficulty you choose to an extent. As each investigation is random in nature, no mystery is quite the same, even if it ends up being the same ghost back to back. As you play the game more and more, you can definitely become more efficient at identifying the ghosts, either by unlocking or upgrading new equipment, or by learning some of the unique quirks about the ghosts. For example, a Yuri is the only ghost type that is able to slam a door shut, or a Wraith will never go through piles of salt. While these examples are not key pieces of evidence, they add unique ways in which to identify specific ghosts. The more you play the game, the more you will uncover these little details which add to the complexity of the puzzle of finding the ghost, especially on higher difficulties. Initially, I was content with just correctly finding the right ghost type for each investigation, but additional objectives and ways to increase your payout for the investigation kept the game from feeling stale. The pursuit of the perfect investigation became my new challenge. And this is one of the key strengths of the game. Its random nature, coupled with the large number of ghost types, secondary objectives, and difficulty settings, allow the game to keep drawing you in for that next challenge. This is all self-driven, mind you, so if you're the type of person who likes a guided experience through a game, then you may find Phasmophobia boring or stale much faster than other gamers. Just to quickly expand on 2 things. First, difficulty settings, and the second, the challenge mode, as these are both positives. As I've said, as you progress through the game and unlock higher difficulties, the game experience tends to improve, and this is good for player retention. The same applies to the game's weekly challenge mode, which has offered some unique challenges during my playtime. 2 polar opposite examples which were interesting. A zero evidence challenge where players had to rely on the unique traits of the ghosts, which encouraged learning different ghost tells. The second was a ghost that was friendly on a large map, where you just had to find the ghost room and determine the ghost type without the threat of the ghost hunting, which was a nice change. So the challenge mode has kept me coming back to the game, as it's offered something new to mix it up. You may have noticed I haven't mentioned one of the biggest parts of the game yet, and that's the game's maps, and there is a reason for this. While the ghost hunting is fun to play with your friends, the maps leave a lot to be desired. Let me explain. There are 4 modern style houses which feel more or less the same. These just differ in size. 2 farmhouses and 2 camping maps, which again are very similar to each other. These 8 maps are the most playable in size, and it's possible to find the ghost room in a reasonable amount of time, and trips to the van don't take too long for fetching equipment. But honestly, all of these maps are generic and lacking in atmosphere. The prison, school, lighthouse and insane asylum are all gigantic maps, and I straight up avoid playing these, as you could spend 10 plus minutes exploring these maps just to find the ghost room, which is quite boring. It's a shame, as these locations offer something different, but they are so big they're the opposite of fun to play. Out of all of the maps, only 2 areas have atmosphere. The first area is the main block in the prison map, which gives Alcatraz vibes, and would be brilliant if this section alone was the whole map. The second area is a combination of rooms from the insane asylum called Sunny Meadows. Here, there are rooms covered in bloodstains, torture chair rooms, a padded cell with scratch marks. The morgue has one of the ghost's dead bodies left out. and there are a few other creepy rooms scattered around. This is what I expected to see in a ghost hunting game. Horror and scary vibes throughout the maps. If this map was significantly condensed down, it would be excellent. I also want to add that many of the assets are copy and pasted between maps, and the overall look of the game feels very dated. I'd love to see a graphical overhaul, but I think more realistically, I think more needs to be done to improve the atmosphere of the maps, especially since the game has been out for 4 years and seems to have retained a very high number of active players, further boosted by the release on consoles, which is how I found the game myself. The last point I want to make is really 2 in 1. Phasmophobia has one mode which can be mixed up using the challenge mode or increasing difficulty settings, but this only goes so far. Given how popular the game has remained, I think the game is crying out for additional objectives or game modes to jazz things up a bit. So in combination, I think the game has wasted potential at the moment and could do with some new modes such as a play as the ghost mode, murder mystery, a speedrun mode, and so on. While working on my review for Phasmophobia, I came across a game called Demonologist, which is very similar to Phasmophobia in premise, but is PC only and built on Unreal Engine 5. I'm not going to do a full comparison between the two games, but in brief, Demonologist's aesthetic and atmosphere is brilliant, and perfectly captures what I wanted Phasmophobia to be. The haunted house I played in the demo is full of spooky details and random events which are far more provoking than the ones in Phasmophobia. Demonologist also made me realise that the audio design in Phasmophobia is underutilised. For example, I'd be exploring the ghost room and you'd get a massive clang on the piano, or another audio effect, which in the space of 30 minutes exploring the demo, had me jumping out my skin more times than in 60 hours of Phasmophobia. I cannot comment on the ghost hunting experience or the gameplay progression in Demonologist, as I've only played one map in the demo, but from this short snippet, Demonologist appears to have fixed many of my issues or complaints I have with Phasmophobia. Overall, I think Phasmophobia has gained success from the gameplay alone, which keeps you entertained and coming back to play it, but as discussed, many areas of the game such as map selection, atmosphere, game modes and audio design could do with work, especially with more modern examples such as Demonologist breathing down its neck.